Did you know that memories don't stay the same over time? In this video, I'm going to tell you why it's important for you to understand that and to address things as early as possible when they happen. In a previous video that I'll link below, I talked about how trauma affects the brain and how neuroplasticity is this idea of the brain making connections and learning in different ways, and that changes over time. And the way that we interpret the world around us is based on past experiences and how the brain has changed. I want to go into a little bit more detail about the impact of memories and how they change over time. It's something we don't really think about very much. You may have never even heard this before, but I want to use the illustration that it's kind of like the game of telephone. If you remember playing this as a kid, where one person will be given a phrase to repeat, and they lean over and they whisper something in the next person's ear, and then that person whispers what they hear in the next person's ear, and this goes all the way around to the circle. And then when they get to the end of the circle, the person repeats what was whispered to them, and inevitably it's nowhere near what the beginning message was. Well, this is kind of how memories work, actually. When we have something that happens to us, we don't actually remember the event. We remember how we remember the event. So if something really bad happens, when I think on that the second time, then I may leave a detail out, or I may have seen something a little bit differently than it actually happened. So it changes just a little bit. And then the next time I think about that memory, I'm remembering the previous time that I remembered the event. And again, I'm not going to remember that perfectly. I'm going to remember some sort of detail a little bit differently. I'll forget something, I'll add something. Somebody may say something to me about the event and it puts something else in there, and then I think that actually happened. It changes once again, and this just keeps going further and further. There was actually a research study done. I'm going to try to talk about this off the top of my head, so if you need to correct me, feel free to leave that in the comments below. It's fine. But the idea was that these group of research participants were shown a picture of a house, and while they were looking at the house, the researchers gave them electrical shock. And so then they later on showed the participants this same picture of the house. But they showed this picture the second time at different points in time. So one, if I remember right, is about 6 minutes after seeing the original picture. And the second one, it was a day or 2 days after seeing the original picture. And then they somehow measured the fear response of the individuals looking at the picture. So again, they see a picture, they get shocked, and then later on they get shown the picture again, and the researchers measure how much fear is exhibited. And what they found was that the people who saw the picture later on actually had more fear than the group that saw it just a few minutes after the original presentation of the picture. What they concluded was that there was more time for meaning and interpretation to be given to this picture that had a negative stimulus attached to it. And as they thought about it and remembered it imperfectly and took their own stuff and put it in there, the longer that had time to marinate, the more impact that it had, and they exhibited more fear later on. This is how memories work. We don't remember things the exact same way. Just now, today, I saw one of these memories on Facebook come up, and I clicked on it. And my description of that event, I'd told the story several different times as a funny story. My description of that event now, and the way I remember it now, is different than the way that I described it a year ago when it actually happened. Memories change over time. We're not actually remembering the event, we're remembering an imprint of the event, and each time we remember it, it changes. So what's the point? If you have had some negative event happen to you, think about the picture that was shown to the group. The earlier they went back and looked at it, the less of a negative impact it had. So if you've had something negative happen to you, some sort of trauma or something like that, think about how your brain is going to continue to adapt and draw meaning to that. They had a little picture shown to them and they had a fear response. You can imagine years upon years of thinking back on a trauma and your memory about it changing, and you going into the world and seeing different things happen and interpreting that differently and just piling all this stuff on. And the brain and its neuroplasticity continuing to do what it's supposed to do, draw meaning, make sense of things, learn from things in order to keep us safe. So if the memory is changing over time, the further we get away from that event, the more of an impact it's going to have on our thinking. And it's very, very important for us to think about that if we don't want to have as much of a negative impact, we need to do the work as soon as possible. Don't wait years for your brain to make these connections. That it's a lot harder to unravel those the longer you wait. So I just want to encourage you to get in with someone, talk with someone. There are qualified counselors out there who have experience in working with trauma, and they know techniques to help unravel the connections that are made in the brain. So don't wait, do it as early as possible so you can minimize the negative effects that may happen in your brain.